In this video, we are going to talk about the Tkinter module. So the Tkinter module is Python's standard graphical user interface or GUI module. So it allows a programmer to create a windowed application instead of your application kind of running in the command line. It provides an interface to something called TK. And TK is a free open source cross-platform graphics toolkit. So you can run it on many different types of machines. It's free. If you Google TK software, you can take a look at their website. So to use Tkinter, first import Tkinter as TK. So that's what I'm going to go with. So whenever you use something out of TK, if you do it this way, you'll have to prepend TK to it. You'll see if you look at other references, right, you'll see import TK from Tkinter import asterisk a lot of times. But I just think it's a little bit better to do it this way. And I don't think that's such a huge price to pay. Prepending everything with TK dot. So be aware of that. If you're looking at different sources, they'll have different styles of importing. So it might be different from yours. If you haven't watched about the videos about the modules and importing and their variations, make sure you go back and watch that and understand the different types of imports. So that would be the first step. Next, what you would do is to create a TK object, and that's capital TK. That's going to provide you with a base window, and you'll put all of the widgets, which are components of your graphical user interface, into that base window. And once you do that, then call the main loop, and then that will start the application running. So take a look in the TK first example. Let's do that. So here's what it looks like. And so first I import Tkinter as TK, then create a capital TK object. Again, in order to do that, because of the way I've imported, right, you're going to have to prepend that with TK dots to tell it Python what module that's located in. I give that a name. I'm just calling it root. Okay. And then whatever name you give it, then you call the main loop method. And that's going to start it. So when you run that, it's going to open up a window. So here's the window. You can see there's nothing going on here. I tried to make this first example as simple as I possibly could. But notice, right, we still get a lot of functionality. We can resize this window if we want to. We can move it around. We can maximize it. We can minimize it. Okay. And we can close it out and stop the program from running. Okay. So all of that functionality, right, is provided by this code that's in the Tkinter module. Okay. So that's the bare minimum that you can do to maybe not bare minimum. Maybe you can get it down a little bit lower than that, but it's pretty close. Okay. So that's the first example. It's not very interesting because it doesn't contain any widgets. So what is a widget? Well, it's just a graphical component of the user interface, and it allows the user to interact with your program, or it can display information to the user. So some examples of things that we'll do are labels, buttons, text box. That should be called entry. It's actually called entry in Tkinter. Scroll bar, menu, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll want to put those things into our first example that we did, into that TK object that we created. Those widgets are implemented via classes, right? So what you'll need to do is to create objects from those classes to incorporate widgets into your user interface. Here is a good reference for Tkinter. It's old, so if you go to that site, here's what you'll see. This is and kind of an old one. It was created by this guy who's known as FBot, and he's since passed away, so this is no longer maintained. And so this is a mirror of that site as it appeared in 2021. So that introduction was last updated in 2005 for Python 2. And so we are using Python 3. So there's some things that are different. Number one, your import statement has to be import tkinter with a lowercase t. If you look back at some of the old code, it's uppercase T for tkinter. So since we're using Python 3, it's lowercase. So if you're looking at other references, those other references might be Python 2 code, which will look a little bit different, right? So here they show you some of the main changes, some modules that were renamed when we went over to Python 3. So you'll have to use the Python 3 names, right? Because we're no longer using Python 2. All right, but this remains a pretty good reference here, subject to those changes, okay? So that's why I provided the link here. Okay, so let's briefly talk about some of the widgets that we'll use in this first programming assignment in Tkinter. So the first one is the label widget, and to get an example of that, let's take a look at the label widget. So here again, I have the import. I create the TK object, and then this one, this next line here sets the title of the window. So in the previous example, the window was just TK. So now I've changed this as to label example. Okay, and so that just sets the title of the main window. Here I am creating a label object. So I'm going to use the label class. Right? In the label class, I'm going to give it two arguments. Number one, the parent object. So this label is going to be inside root, inside this TK object. So where it lives basically are the parent object. And then I want to put the text that I want to display onto the label, okay, as the second argument when to this init of the init method of the label. And then I save that in a variable called myLabel, okay? And so that creates the label object that I'm going to, and it resides into this window here. I have to tell Python how I want that placed into the main window. And here I'm just going to use the pack method. And we'll talk about the pack method in a little bit more detail in the next section that we do. Okay, so these are the three new things: how to set the title of the Tkinter window, how to create a label object, how to put it inside the parent. And then we just do root.main loop, same as we did before. So when I run that, here's what I get, and I'll try not to resize it. It's really hard. I can't even move it unless I resize it. So here it is. You can see it's very, very small. I've even resized it to what it was before. So I'll need to resize it here, and it's a little bit easier to deal with. So here you can see the label is inside here. Here you can see the title. Okay. So the label just shows some text within your graphical user interface. That's what we're going to use it for right now. All right, so that's it on the label. Next up, let's look at the button widget. Now, the button widget is used to implement buttons in your application. Those buttons can contain text or images. So looking at that example, looks like this. So here I have the standard, the import, the same. I create the TK object and save it as into the variable root. Here I set the title as I did before, and now new in this example is geometry. It gets old, especially as you're writing these graphical user interface, to have to constantly be resizing the window. So you can make the initial geometry whatever you like. Here I'm just going to do a width of 400 and a height of 400. So you can accomplish that using the geometry command. Here I create the button object, very similar to how I created it before. I tell the TK window where it's going to reside, the parent, and then the text that goes onto the button. Then I use the pack method again to put that button in there, and I call main loop. And so this time when I create it, you can see that I get a window here that I don't have to resize. I can click on the button. Right now, currently, nothing happens, but you can see when I click on it, there is some effect there if I hold down the mouse button. So that stuff is built into the button class itself. Okay. All right, in the final example, we're going to take a look at the entry object. And the entry object is used to enter or display a single line of text. So you can get some input from the user. This example is almost exactly like the previous button example that we did. Just here, we're using entry instead of button. Here you can see I didn't pass any text. I just created a root, which is the parent object, in the call to the entry objects in it. Okay. So when I run that, I get this example. The entry is this single text box here. You can type code into there and press the enter key. Right now, it doesn't really do anything. So that's it for this video. We'll talk about how to actually make things happen with these TK enter objects in a later video.